Well, this is a critical time for Nigeria as the government needs to shore up revenue to meet its obligations. Oil prices around the budget benchmark at this time, even though we saw some kind of bounce back with oil this morning, but yesterday's drop was really big. A lot of talk about tourism industry, how much can contribute to our GDP. To help us understand how to make it work is Adenike Macaulay. She's CEO Wakana, Nigeria. She joins me right here in the studio. Great to have you. Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, so I'm sure, let's go back now before we get into, the industry. 2 days. 2 days we had industrial action and we saw flights grounded. Paint a picture, for me. How much did that impact your industry?
So domestic airlines operations were grounded really 100% on Tuesday. International, not so much, but it still impacted a lot of them because they decided to err on the side of caution and cancel their inbound flights. So it was very disruptive. Upon that, I think NIBS was also down. So even transactions, even new transactions were impacted beyond the ones that were actually waiting to fly on that day. So it was really, really disruptive. We understand, of course, the reason behind it, but still the airline industry is one that is always deeply impacted when there are these sort of disruptions.
Right.
And yes, this was the experience in the last couple of days.
And if you want to put a figure to that, the loss, what, just an estimate, at this time to the industry?
On a daily basis, I would say the loss to the domestic airlines would be in the excess of 10 to 15 billion. 10 to 15 billion. On a daily basis. That's a big amount.
Yes. And we had that for about 2 days.
For 2 days.
All right, so...
It was 1.5 days, so operations restarted yesterday.
And we know it's all about the minimum wage, at this time. I know in your company, you guys pay salaries, definitely. And we're all trying to find that national minimum wage, that sweet spot. What would you say is the right number? Somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle. Between
the current minimum wage, or what is actually currently being offered, and what is being requested by the NLC. In as much as we understand the reasons behind, I would say the reluctance and the pressure it will put on the national budget, what is being requested by the NLC. But again, if we consider a living wage, 30,000, 60,000, with the core inflation today, food inflation almost being up to 40%, there needs to be a bit of a jump from the current offer, which is 60,000. So yes, that sweet spot is what we hope that we find.
We're all trying to find that.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle at this point.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the, the industry, the tourism industry at this time. We're seeing Egypt. Egypt led the pack in 2022 with about $12.2 billion. That's what the receipts, they made. Morocco followed, South Africa, Tanzania, Tunisia. And these were the top 5, in 2022. And definitely we see the government here. The government's trying to get, revenue in at this time. For the Q1 data, I think about 3%. Tourism contributed about 3% to the GDP in the first quarter. So talk to me about where we are right now in the tourism industry in Nigeria.
There has been a bit of a growth, I would say, since COVID. The factors that impeded the growth of international tourism and travel, outbound tourism as we call it, is what kind of contributed to the growth of domestic tourism. What happened is with the increase in the cost, at least in the last year, with the airlines having their funds trapped for, I think, about 18 months to 24 months until the rate of exchange was floated and they started to repatriate a little bit, it forced customers to look inwards. Also, with the devaluation of the naira, your naira is able to go much further if you look inwards. However, despite this little growth that we've seen, which has also impacted domestic travel, if you look at the total number of passenger traffic last year, there was actually a bit of a shrinkage, but that was only on the international travel side. Domestic travel actually grew, which kind of supports the fact that there's been a bit of a growth when it comes to domestic tourism. However, this does not even start to scratch the surface with the potential that we have as a nation and what we can harness from tourism. We'll take some of these examples, South Africa, Egypt. What is driving the growth? What is driving this level of contribution from tourism to their economy? I usually like to speak about the 3 A's of tourism. The first is attraction. Why do you want to go there? These 5 countries have a very active tourism board. very active tourism ministry that is focused on positioning the country as the place they want to be to the sect of travelers that they want to attract. South Africa, for instance, has been on this for a while, and they remain consistent. My team just got back from a familiarization tour to South Africa, even though we're very familiar with South Africa as a destination, but they continue to reinforce. When it comes to accessibility, visas, the countries that they want to attract tourists from, even within Africa. South Africa just relaxed their visa regime for Kenyans. And last year we saw, I think, about a 75% growth of inbound tourists from Kenya to South Africa. So these are the couple of things that we need to fix in Nigeria: accessibility, attraction, and also, so of course, infrastructural issues, security. But those first two are always the starting points for positioning your country for real contribution from the tourism sector. Right,
and definitely there's a cost of living crisis at this time. I remember, you know, I've checked, you know, travel fares, you know, out of the country, and the economy I see today, the price for economy flight, that used to be business, you know, at some point, you know. So there's an affordability issue right now. Talk to me about conversations going on in the industry, you know, so that people can, you know, fly more.
I know.
As it was. It's really expensive.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's a reflection of the value of the naira as it is today. Last year, there was a bit of, I would say, an artificial inflation. Because of the airlines having their funds trapped, they decided to restrict the lower fare inventory from the market because they were forced to sell at the then official rate. So the fare that is today, let's say to London, $1,000, as of last year, the airlines were forced to sell at 463, which was 463,000 naira. But they knew that they were probably not going to get their funds repatriated at 463, which meant that they started to hedge and restrict those lower ticket fares from the market. So you had the $2,000 fares available at 463, so you get it at probably under $1 million. Today, since the floating of the exchange rate, the airlines can now seek their funds and forex from multiple sources at the unified rate, which is closer to the market rate. So what that in essence means is today exchange rate is 1,500 to $1. That's what the airlines are selling at. Last year it was 463. Even if the airlines have taken the step to then open up all the inventory, today at 1,500, $1,000 is 1.5 million. That is why we're seeing this increase. Now, in terms of what to do to ensure affordability, things like, as a business, installmental payments, pay small. We recently also introduced Price Watch to ensure that customers can plan their trips better. Nigeria is a late bookers market, which means that most of the bookings come in pretty much 4 to 7 days before travel. Right. And when you're booking 4 to 7 days before travel, you're getting the most expensive, mostly the most expensive fare available. But if you're allowed to plan earlier, then you will get access to the cheaper fares. And that is what offering installmental payments, having the ability to watch the fare. Price Watch means that you can set like an alert on a route and it continues to send you how the fares are evolving within a week. So you can decide, okay, this is within my threshold, I would book now. So those types of innovations.
Instrumental payments sound, you know, good, but at what cost? So there must be some kind of interest.
Yes. At the end of the day, if you book, let's say 2 months prior to travel, you can get that fare up to 50% less than when you book 7 days to travel. So even if you're paying 3%, 5% for cost of credit, you're still getting it at 47% cheaper. So allowing customers to plan earlier by offering these payment options is what we as a business, of course, offer to travelers. But at the end of the day, cost of traveling internationally is expensive. We encourage customers to also look inwards should our tourism sector continue to develop. And we've seen that with the domestic travel actually increasing. We've seen that. Right.
And I know, you know, conversations right now about how expensive it is, you know, moving within, you know, Africa. And we look at, you know, continents like Europe. It's cheaper, you know, to move around Europe as a European citizen. But in Africa, you know, we're seeing that it's really expensive, you know, moving within Africa. What do you think Africa should be doing, you know, at this time to make travel within Africa affordable?
So part of the reason why travel within Europe is somewhat cheaper than what you get within Africa is capacity. you have more capacity available to travel from one country to another within Europe. We can't say the same particularly for West Africa. If you're trying to go to Equatorial Guinea today, there is no direct flight. When I was working with Lufthansa, I would have to fly to Frankfurt and then from Frankfurt fly to Equatorial Guinea within Africa. So a matter of investing in increasing the capacity and air connectivity within Africa is the first step for us to start seeing that reduction in fares. Of course, it's a topic of supply over demand. Today, there is excess demand over supply, which is why the fares are high. But it's not the same in Europe. There's excess capacity, both by air, by rail, by land, by sea. So there are options. Once we start to explore the options that we have, even beyond air, we would start to see a reduction to a level that should be affordable for intercontinental
within
travel.
Africa.
Yes.
All right, talk to me now, agenda setting. What should the Ministry of Tourism be doing right now? This government needs revenue. What's first steps to get revenue from tourism? Because we have a lot of tourism in Nigeria.
Absolutely. I think the first step is what has been done, establishing a Ministry of Tourism.
Right.
Prior to this dispensation, there was never a separate Ministry of Tourism. Now we have a Ministry of Tourism that is focusing on the policies that need to be in place to ensure that tourism is prioritized as one of the sources, the alternative sources to reduce the overdependency that we have on the oil and energy sector today. And a lot of policy review is going on, engagement with the private sector as well. I was interestingly on a subcommittee to review the existing Nigeria tourism policy, and it's great that now the private sector is being engaged, because a way to actually kickstart and jumpstart that contribution from the tourism sector is by harnessing the capacity and the opportunity and the resources that we have in the private sector. So we're at the starting point now, policy review being done with the private sector, also enabling public-private partnerships.
Right.
In South Africa, one of the things that they've done to, of course, increase accessibility within the city is the Gautrain project. When you land in OR Tambo, there is a train, high-speed train that can take you to Pretoria, it can take you to Johannesburg. That was a public-private project. So you see that the countries that are invested in those areas that would enable you to unlock tourism, attraction, positioning your market in the light that it should be seen to enable people who even want to come, accessibility, visas. Is your visa accessible? When you get in there, how do you come? Your public infrastructure. All of this needs to be in place.
I'm sure security plays a
of course,
massive role in there.
Massive role. So I was on the committee reviewing security and travelers' experience, really. And I can tell you that the Ministry of Tourism today is actually in that phase of reviewing the policy, setting the policy, but the most important thing is funds allocation to ensure that they're able to execute on what is in paper.
Fantastic. Well, we'll be looking for the contribution for 2024, and hopefully we get some good contribution going into 2025. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Adenike Macaulay, CEO, Wakanao Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so there you have it. We're going to be looking forward to the close today. That's for the local stock market. We did get that move yesterday. There was a little bit of profit taking, definitely, but we still ended positive. That's for the market, 0.24%. That was a jump there. 132 billion, that was what was added. But who knows? Maybe it might be a positive week for the stock market right here in Nigeria. Definitely watch out for that. Thank you so much. That's it from me on Business Morning. I hand things over now to the Sunrise Daily team. I'm Ladi Williams.